the ACLU has filed suit against you for not yet scheduling special elections for Randy Fine and Joel Rudman's seats. Do you have a date yet for when you'll make that announcement?
So I wanted to do them the same time as the congressional. The problem is you have the resign to run, and so by the time those letters are submitted, you can't stand up the special election to be the same as those dates. We couldn't get it. They couldn't get it done. So then because you got to give people time to qualify. And if I would have done, they submit their letter during that week. If I just would have demanded date, it wouldn't have ended up adding up properly. So once you know that, you can't physically seat anybody in time for the session to be over at that point. So I think the Secretary of State is working on proposing dates. He's going to talk to, he probably has talked to the respective counties. I guess with Randy Fine, it's just Brevard probably for that. And then I think with Rudman, I think maybe 2 counties, maybe Okaloosa, Santa Rosa. So we'll do it. But my preference was to have that in the same time. The problem is when you set the congressional, you don't know who's going to end up resigning to run when you do that. If I already knew that, then maybe I could have done it. But you have to wait for that process to fly out under Florida law and then do it. Incidentally, on this resign to run, I think it's a ridiculous thing the way it's worked out in Florida. I mean, the idea is, I think, that they want you to focus on the job you got elected to and then not run for anything else while you're supposedly being. The problem is, you don't actually resign until the election's over anyways. So all these guys are campaigning. Rudman's campaigning. These guys are campaigning anyways. And then if they win, obviously they go to the next one. If they lose, then they're out. But by the time they get forced out, they're done with the election anyways. So if you were going to do resign to run, you would say you resign the minute you announce your candidacy, which is not what they've done. So I think they should just chuck the whole thing. I think it's been more expensive for the state as a result of having to do the resign to run. It just hasn't worked. But at a minimum, if you're going to do it, the resignation, you would want it to be effective prior to the campaigning, because I think the reason is you don't want people getting elected. They're supposed to do their job here in the legislature, but then they're out campaigning or whatever. I don't think that actually even works that way, because legislators are up every 2 years, so they're constantly out campaigning. It's not like the campaign really ends. Same thing with members of Congress. But I think this has been a big expense for really no reason for the state of Florida. We could have just said, you guys can do what you want. And look, I mean, it may have triggered special elections if they're successful, and I get that, but to force these special elections is ridiculous. But I would have preferred to do them the same dates. We just physically, you can't do it when you're dealing with resign to run, because I wouldn't have been able to have enough time to qualify. So then the question is, do you try to jam it in a couple weeks later? The session's going to be over at that point. So we've said, give us the dates that you want. I know Court is going to recommend some stuff, and we'll do it. But my preference would have been to do it the same time. It just, resign to run doesn't work that way.
And with immigration,